Hello, my name is Michelle Montemayor, and I'm going to be talking about the exposure to particulate matter and its effects on children's lungs. Although it is known that air pollutants are harmful to our health, there are still many questions as to just how harmful they actually are. One of the harmful effects of air pollutants are its effects on asthma. The negative effects of air pollutants on asthma have been studied many times in the past. There already is an established link that exposure to air pollutants make the symptoms of asthma worse. But the question of whether there is a connection between early life exposure to air pollutants and the onset of asthma in children is still less established. There needs to be more research done to answer this important question. Although it is known that air pollutants are contributing to major health issues, there still isn't enough being done to reduce the effects on our health. The number of pollutants that are in our air with each passing year continues to increase. Because of this, if we don't work to find a solution to reduce air pollutants in our environment, this can cause more and more people to develop asthma with each generation. Air pollutants, specifically fine particulate matter, can cause many different health issues like respiratory diseases. It has been proven that long-term exposure over the course of a lifetime can greatly increase diseases and health issues like COPD, asthma, poor lung function, and other associated diseases and issues. Children, adolescents, and young adults are especially more prone to the negative effects of air pollutants. Children generally inhale higher doses of these pollutants, typically spending more time outside, being mouth breathers, and having higher rapid breathing rates causes them to inhale more pollutants and have prolonged periods of exposure. Places that have started the steps to drastically reduce air pollution have seen a significant difference in respiratory related issues. Some regulatory options aimed at risk reduction and control are switching over from gas powered vehicles to electronically operated vehicles. Also, providing incentives for people to carpool or use public transportation to reduce carbon emissions and air pollution. Policies such as the Clean Air Act aim to reduce the amount of air pollutants to improve public health. Evidence backs up that setting air quality standards through acts like this one does have a positive effect. California is the leader in ZEV vehicles, which is zero emission vehicles adoption, which has reduced pollution and has seen improvement in respiratory health and air quality benefits. An increase of 20 ZEVs per 1,000 population was associated with a decrease in nitrogen dioxide levels and a 3.2 reduction in asthma-related emergency department visits. Stricter air emission standards have led to substantial air quality improvements. Studies prove that when presented with different conditions, such as the reduction of exposure to air pollutants, lung function and health issues decrease. Enhanced lung function in children was linked to the reduction in particulate matter and nitrogen dioxide levels. Through the research that I examined, there is evidence that confirms that there is a positive association between air pollutants' effects on the onset of childhood asthma. It is also shown that there are key effects on the lung function of children due to the exposure of these air pollutants. Children can be far more susceptible to the development of asthma. Research determined that the long-term exposure to ambient fine particulate matter, PM2.5, affects the lung function in children, adolescents, and young adults. PM2.5 is a fine particle that can easily make its way deep into the lungs and therefore into the bloodstream. The air pollutant ambient particulate matter, PM, alone contribute to 1.4 million deaths due to respiratory diseases. When talking specifically about PM2.5, which is the fine version of PM, it is a type of air pollutant that is considered to be very harmful to lung health. PM 2.5 affects all of the three different factors that make up lung function, which are FVC, FEV, and maximum mid-deoxytory flow, which is MMEF. It was found that PM 2.5 greatly affected MMEF in lung function. MMEF is what we use to determine small airway function. Small airway function is critical in lung function and is where obstructions can worsen our ability to breathe and can worsen asthma. Research indicates that there was a significant increase in poor lung function due to the long exposure of higher concentrations of PM 2.5 in children, adolescents, and young adults. This demonstrates that even minor effects of air pollutants on lung function early on in life can have a major effect later on. The effects can lead to diseases like asthma, COPD, and even early death. One major lung function disease that is prevalent in our society is asthma. The disease causes airways to tighten and cause inflammation as well in the airways. This can make it extremely difficult to breathe and can have many different symptoms that can even be life-threatening. Asthma is known to affect millions of people worldwide. The number of cases of childhood asthma have increased drastically over the last few decades. One cause of this is an increased traffic air pollution. Children are more susceptible to the negative effects of exposure to pollutants. This can be because early life and childhood could represent critical exposure windows for asthma development due to the plasticity and susceptibility of target organs and systems during these developmental periods and long maturation periods of the respiratory, immune, and detoxification systems. Research has linked the association between the later development of asthma in children from birth to adolescence and exposure to the traffic air pollutants. Researchers found that when specifically looking into the risk of developing asthma when exposed to PM 2.5, there was a significant increase, especially in children 6 years and younger. When exposed to PM10, a coarse form of PM that can pass through the throat or nose and into the lungs, there was a significant increase of risk to children of all ages. Another pollutant that was mentioned was NO2, which can also almost exclusively be traffic related because it is primarily an exhaust pollutant. Evidence supports that long-term exposure to NO2 significantly increases the risk of the development of asthma in children. Children with pre-existing conditions and weakened immune systems are even more vulnerable. Early exposure to PM 2.5 along with NO2 is connected to a higher risk of developing asthma before the age of 5 and by the age of 12. Evidence supports that the early exposure can lead to decreased lung function as well as increased asthma risk. Early childhood and adolescence are a critical period of immune system and airway development. Lung function is critical to our overall health and well-being. It helps our body perform many different functions. Lungs help pump blood through our veins to different areas of our body by assisting our heart in maintaining proper blood flow. Lungs also help us intake oxygen and exhale carbon monoxide. Our bodies and the cells in them need oxygen to function and live. Without oxygen, our cells and organs will shut down and die. When lung function is decreased, we run a greater risk at our bodies functioning properly. Children being more susceptible to health issues, making them even more vulnerable to the risk of deadly effects of poor lung function, specifically infants, are at the greatest risk. There is evidence that supports a positive association between the exposure of PM 2.5 and infant mortality. The effects of PM 2.5 can pose a great threat since it can penetrate deep into the lungs and infiltrate the bloodstream. Because this can massively affect the functioning of the lungs, which, as stated before, is vital to the functioning of our bodies, pollutants entering our bloodstreams also poses major threats to different organ systems. The exposure of PM 2.5 is already linked to having adverse effects on an adult system, which can lead to adult mortality. Because an infant's system are still in the developing process and therefore more vulnerable, the adverse effects of exposure can be more fatal. It is suggested that exposure during both the prenatal and postnatal, specifically during the first months of being born, periods of infancy, can lead to a higher risk of mortality. Infant deaths can be caused by things like birth defects, the most common cause, premature birth, low birth weight, maternal complications, sudden infant death syndrome, and unintentional injuries. Although these are the most common causes, there still is a major portion of infant deaths that the causes of are uncertain. It is suggested that the exposure to environmental pollutants, specifically air pollutants, might be a contributing factor in these deaths. The World Health Organization concluded in 2005 that the evidence is sufficient to infer a causal relationship between particulate air pollution and respiratory diseases in the postnatal period. Air pollutants, specifically fine particulate matter, has major negative effects on a person's health. There is much research related to air pollution and how it can contribute to health issues and diseases. Even though this is true, there still needs to be more in-depth research done about just how dangerous PM 2.5 can be and how big of a contributor it is to our health. Even more research needs to be done on the impact pollutants have specifically on children's lung function and how it can be a major contributor to the development of childhood asthma. Childhood and adolescence are crucial periods for lung development. Improved lung function at this stage is likely to persist into adulthood, potentially reducing the risk of respiratory conditions and increasing life expectancy. Through the various research found, the link between air pollutants and children's lung function is significant. It contributes to many different health issues that can range from minor to severe. some which can be deadly. We need to work together to find solutions to these problems and improve the overall health of future generations.